Okay, let's look at how we can define element to contain text only. Again, we're going to have two named complex types, and I need to make one thing very clear here. Earlier, in fact, let me get to it, and then I'll make the distinction or clarification. We have a history type, and we have a sequence, and we have multiple elements being defined, and they all reference out to some named simple or complex type. So let's get to the first one. We have year built, and you can see down here that's an element name. And then let's find out to which the type references. So we go up here, we have year type, it searches around, and the parser finds this year type, and it gets into this named complex type, a recipe, if you will, on how this data is going to be restricted. We have simple content, it's going to be text that's in it. And then this extension, this is the clarification I wanted to make. This positive integer, this applies to here, the data that goes in the element, not the attribute. Just to repeat, this extension base gets applied to the data that goes in the element, not the attribute value. Okay, so we have it set to positive integer, and then attribute gets created, and it's named era, and we can see it here, era, and it's set equal to BC, and both of them are, and it's string data, so as long as it's a letter or a number, it's fine, nothing big there. And then we, again, everything gets closed out as it should be. The one thing that we want to see here is that, okay, this has been set to positive integer, and when we look at our year built, this one actually validates because it follows the rules. It's a positive integer. This one, on the other hand, would be invalid because it's not an integer, a number, or whatever. It's a bunch of letters. So that would be invalid. The parser, what it's looking for is some kind of positive integer. Okay, complex types and XML Schema has the ability to handle mixed content. Mixed content is where you would have, here's an example XML document, this is from the book, where you would have the parent story, and rather than having an element right after that, you actually have content that's right in story. We can put it right there. And then inside a story, we had this with our vegetable seed catalog example where we had description and then we used bold in there. That's using mixed content. So same for XML Schema, you can do that. And here we have a paragraph break that we've created that can go in there, and it can go in pretty much anywhere we want, and then it gets closed out with story. So it's not just inside a story there's another element, but there's actual content right afterwards. Say another element, content element, that's called mixed content. So there's an XML example. Here's what it would look like in XML Schema. So let's look at where this would happen. So here is where, this is what we're going to talk about, but I want to, before we get there, see how it gets called. So we have our element name story created there, right? That's our element. And then again, rather than it being set to just say string or date or whatever to a built-in data type, it calls out to a named complex type, and as you can see, it highlights there. So we go up here, and in this complex type that's named story type, we're going to create a definition for mixed content. So we have to set, this is the little recipe we use. We create this mixed command, and then we set it equal to true because it means yes, we're going to be using mixed content. And then here we have our little sequence. Again, this is just the recipe. It's easier, I think, with some of this, in this case, just to follow it rather than trying to think of why. I mean, I can give you the reason that sequence is going to be inside of story, so that's the parent-child relationship. That's why you have to use that command. And then inside we're going to have another element, and para is our element, and max occurs is unbounded. You can see nothing really goes in para, so there's no, it's not set to any kind of data or anything like that. And anyways, you set that the max occurs. You can do min occurs. You can require it to occur once. In this case, max occurs unbounded. You could say, you could set it equal to 10 or whatever and limit it, but in this case it's unbounded. So that's using mixed content in XML Schema. We can also use mixed content and set it to min occurs or max occurs. Here's another example where we have a named complex type. It's called notes type. The mixed is set equal to true. The sequence min occurs is 1, and then here we have an element where we've actually defined the element name, whereas when we had para, we didn't really do much with that. We just set it to unbounded, and you couldn't really put anything in paragraph, para. But here we have major, and you can actually, you can actually put string data in that, and the most times you can use it is 1. Again, I kind of think about this where you might have, say, a person's name or department that they're affiliated with, and then you have the major, and you can only have one major. There's no dual majors, something like that, where you might use that. So that's another example of how you can use mixed content.